Okay, so it's been 24 hours since we've last sort of been working on this one. So what we've actually had on there in the meantime is a couple of coats, 2 coats of Johnson's Clear, like we've done before, just sprayed all over it, neat, come along. And then what happens is, gives us a nice glossy finish to work on, and that obviously cuts down silvering and things like that. So we've covered decals in other things, so we'll just have the quick rundown of the way we do it. So obviously making sure you've got a nice clean brush. We've just got some warm water, which obviously the decal down here has been sat soaking in. Okay, we've got our references, and so what we're going to do is we place water down in here first. Okay, we're going to come along with our decal. Alright, and just slide it off onto it, just like so. Okay, now obviously it's got some ribbing in here. So what we want to do, first of all, we're just going to make sure we're lined up exactly how it should be, and it should be a lot further over. So by looking at the instructions, we can see where it is and how it has to be. So I'm quite happy how that is. So what we're going to do is brush right the way over, just like so, okay? And then take in a cotton bud. What we're going to do, soak off all the excess water from around it. Okay, and we're just going to run up and down each one, squashing the water out. And it's important to get all the water out, just like so. Okay, and then for best results, you take something like, I like to use Micro Industries one, but basically any type of setting solution. Alright, we come along, just dry the brush off a little bit. So remember, clean brush, okay, and right the way over the decal. And it will help it conform and stick exactly to. Now if it wrinkles up and everything, don't worry about it. That's just part of the actual setting solution, because what it does, basically it softens the decal and sucks it down onto the paintwork, and that way you get rid of all the silvering which is caused by the air bubbles underneath. So we're just going to carry on with the rest of the model. Okay, so we're all really happy. The decaling's gone exceptionally well. Now what we've actually done, we run a knife very slowly just across the decal to score it, and then we put some more softener on there. And what that does is help it conform and suck into the actual panel lines. And then obviously over here, because we had a step area to go in, and then obviously we've got this whole one up here and some riveting detail. Same thing, prick it a couple of times with a knife or a little slice, let the softener get in there, lets the air out and gets to work and sucks in. So it might need a couple of goes. So that was left overnight to settle down and everything else like that. We've also now finished doing these, colouring in these areas around the actual things. Now we did that by hand. 2 reasons. One, it gives that effect because it can look like it's kicked in, because it's like an anti-slip type stuff anyway, and also it's just a lot easier than masking it all up and working our way around it. So now we're ready to move on. As you can see, we've taken off the clear part at the front here, purely because we're now going to give it a flat coat. Now the reason for giving it a flat coat is we don't want to come along now and just give it a wash like normal and then get caught up in all this lovely riveting detail that we've taken so much sort of care to do, and these little metal plates, because I've got a feeling it's going to be a problem to get it off. So what I'm going to do is actually airbrush on a wash and then let it stay, let it drain down naturally, and hopefully it will give us a very nice weathering effect. Trouble is, we're quite a glossy, because obviously we've got the glossiness of the actual, you know, when we've put it on before we was decaling. And the other thing as well now is that we don't want to get any wash or anything underneath any of the actual decals, perhaps this clear B and things like that, because if it does get underneath it, we're never going to get it out. So what we're going to do, we're going to use a little bit of flat. I've got some knocked up already. Okay, so anybody's flat will do. So all we're going to do, pour this into a colour cup. Okay, check our flow. And all we're going to do is just spray absolutely everywhere with it. So I said normally you should probably have this done in a spray bay or something like that. So we're just going to go down that side for the minute. And immediately you'll notice your paint will darken and things like that. Well, don't worry about that too much, because it will lighten off. Now this isn't designed to totally give us a totally dead flat finish and everything else. What this is trying to do is just protect, and also it'll give the wash something to grip to, so it doesn't just all slide off of a dead sort of flat shiny surface. It'll give it something to bite onto. So if we just do the underside as well. Okay, and what we're going to do, we're going to give this about an hour to totally dry. Okay, then when this is totally dried off, we can then put the wash on. Now normally I would say if you're using the wash, give it 24 hours to totally go off and that, but we want this to somewhat stick. We don't want it to literally just pull straight off and not have a problem. But because this is quite a glossy finish already, by putting a flat coat over like this, just spray it down, it was going to come out as more of like a satin coat. You know, if we wanted to, we could turn up the air pressure very, very high, put it on then, and then it'll come back somewhat flat. So I'm going to do the rest of the wings and all the bits and pieces like that, and anywhere else that we want to give it to a wash and be flat. Perhaps you want to do your weapons pylons now and everything else. I've done them, they're all built and sprayed, but we'll actually install them nearer the final reveal. Okay then, so the next thing we can do, now that's totally dry, okay, it might not look as flat, and to be honest it doesn't look that flat, even to me, but what we're trying to do now is a quick, easy way, what I think is going to be the most effective way of weathering this. Now obviously we're going to be using the Pro Modeler's weathering wash. So I've got the dark and the black. Now I'm probably going to use the dark because obviously we're a very light aircraft, especially on the underside. Black would just overkill this, so we want to keep it quite sort of fresh. And somewhat about it, it's got nice lines, nice markings. We just want to give it a little bit of depth perhaps, rather than sort of really try and heavily weather this one up. So we're going to use the dark wash, good old shake. Then what we're going to do is pour it straight into the colour cup, as is. Now the dark dirt, you can probably see down here, is more of a brown. The black is very much a black, so black is going to stand out extremely, extremely strong. So what we're doing, we're going to start on the actual one first. Let's put this back in its holder just a sec across, you guys. Now here I never fixed the top, and there was always a good reason for this. One, I can get the clear part out then and out the way because we don't want that to get weathered, and also I can underside the weather, everything very easy without getting too stuck in, and obviously we've got some finishing parts to go in there. So what we're going to do is just very, very lightly, okay, spray the weathering wash straight over, straight down everything. So we're just going to do 4 little passes just like that. Okay, then we're going to do some down here, across the top, back over these tails. Okay, because the thing is, as you can probably see, certainly on the close-up, you can see it starts to bead up straight away. That's because the surface is quite shiny. And what we want it to do is to sort of come over, give us quite a flat look. So we just spray that on just like that. Now down here onto the underside, and like if you've seen the other ones, what we do is let this build up in layers. So what we're going to do, we're going to carry on over here with the wings, just put on a few little passes, let it dry, and then as we come back and put up some more, we can just keep increasing the amount we're putting on, okay, until we're happy. So we'll leave him like that as well. Perhaps if we stick this one up on his edge. So I'm going to carry on building up these layers. What I'm going to do, I'm going to wait a few moments. You could use a hairdryer and cool setting to speed up the drying, but don't get too close, because as soon as you start pushing the water around, it's going to go to all of the different areas and be quite artificial. We want it to sort of stick on and look quite natural. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on for a moment. Okay, so now it's got some on just to bite to. What we can do is flood in this colour. So what we're going to do is spraying down quite liberally, okay, over everything, making sure we're in gears, up wells, into all those areas. So we've got lots of dirt, and as you can see, we can let it naturally run off. So if you see some little areas, we put the camera here on freehand, you can see there. We've got the weathering wash running off as it would on the real aircraft. And that's the type of thing we're after, is to try and get this sort of quite realistic effect of how grime runs down, heads south, and it pulls in certain areas. The big thing is with this, you just leave it and let it to get on with it yourself. You don't want to be coming around in here now sort of spraying around too heavily, because what happens is, as this is naturally coming down, it's going to get lighter because more and more of this is going to run off and run to the bottom. But if you start pushing it around, it's going to pull up in really odd areas, and perhaps areas where you don't really want it. So what we're going to do is just leave it, and if you've got some warm lights, perhaps those around will speed up the drying time, but certainly don't try and dry it with your airbrush or dry it with anything else. Let it sort of naturally just dry off. Remember, if this goes wrong, don't panic. We'll just wipe it all away or wash it away and we can start again. Job done. So we've already got it going on the other side over here. As you can probably see, it's giving us a nice grimy effect without too much hassle. Very straightforward, very, very easy. And then obviously you can just leave it. If you want to add a little bit more, feel free. Just squirt on a little bit more. And away you go. Very, very simple. One thing is obviously on the bottom, as you'll see here, it's going to be very, very messy just down here. Don't worry about that. We'll deal with that as a separate item afterwards. Okay, so there we go. That's going on quite nicely, but to be honest, it's a little bit too strong for what I'm looking for. So what we're going to do is just water it down a bit. So we got in here just normal, plain, flat water, just tap water even. Okay, and then what we're going to do is just literally rinse over the top, and what it'll do, it'll reactivate. You can probably see it here and it's streaking off, but it reactivates the wash and will take some of it off, and it will just make it smoothen it out a little bit. So if you do feel you've got a little bit too much on there and you want to keep your weathering looking nice, you can just do this and just re-wet it like we've done here, and it will flow away. We just do a little bit more at the top here, and that's a great thing with this wash. You can literally, as and when you like it, just literally drain some more off, and it'll still add those nice weathering effects as it's draining down, but keep it clean. Or you can literally use this like a pressure washer and wash it all away and just start again. So let's do the same on the other side. We're just coming along, re-wetting it. Anywhere that's particularly got too much, we'll just wash it and reactivate it, and it'll all wash off and just rinse down. Okay, so we're really getting there now. So the wash has all been on and dried. And by doing that effect that you've probably saw, if I show you this one first, you can get this nice type of difference. Easiest way to show you, where you get sort of curtain effect. And what I'm trying to replicate is obviously fading and sort of drawn down look. You actually get it on the close-up, you might get it in there. So what we do, we just literally brush over the top with a cloth, a little bit of moisture, and a good old wrap everywhere. And what that'll do is hopefully, don't do that too many times, as you can see, probably close that might be better, but you can actually see you get all the ribs in that stand out really, really nicely. Now obviously you could take this completely off or leave it on there, depending how you do. Now I've got a bit down the bottom here, so what we're going to do is just quite wet, take that off because that's a little bit too much, and then what we're going to do is just rub it back and forth and sort of blend in with what we've got to give us a nice blended effect. If you're too wet, cut to the dry bit of tissue and continue to wipe down, and there you go. You might be able to see it in that one, see it probably on that angle, the overall one there. You can see how we have this curtain effect, which is I was trying to do. What you do, you basically spray it on, as I showed you just a minute ago on that short clip one, let it dry halfway, then rinse off, and that way you clean down the bottom, dirty on top. It honestly, it's a lot easier than it looks. It's one of those things you think, oh, that looks quite complicated to do, but honestly it's not that bad. So same thing for all around these areas here. Anywhere it's a little bit too heavy, and you can just give these a wipe over. Leading edges always seem to be quite clean, and then all we've got to do is just tidy up the insides of the actual bars. So cotton bud gets in here, and we can just clean up those nice and quickly, like so. So okay, once we're done with those, what we can do then is install the pylons. Now I've made the holes a little bit bigger. Have a look through them, and what you do, you find two of them have got slightly shorter fronter feet, which is these two, than the other, and they go to this rear, the furthest one back pylon. So what we can do is hold it from the inside. As I say, I've done these so there's sort of a push fit. So I've made the hole just a tiny bit bigger. Okay, and then we can just pop these all in. The others can go in. What's the short one? Which one goes in? Now we've got to install the lights as well. But what we can do, before I put the glass work in, we want to do this so we can dry it all up. So we're going to put these weapons pylons on, and the one for the torpedo underneath here. Okay, so we're all nice and done like that. And then we can give it a flat coat to protect this wash, so obviously we don't end up sort of getting wet finger marks and taking it all off. Okay then, so as you can see, we've got on quite a bit. So if we talk you through what we've done. Obviously we've installed the torpedo, put that on, pretty straightforward, just got one line-up hole in there, the rest of it all sort of just so fits in. So you just put a drop of super glue on each of the feet down there, and that'll take care of that. As you can see, nice and grimy on the underside, as it would be, although it's hidden a little bit by the torpedo. Okay, prop is on the front, exactly the same way. All we did, masked off the tips, and we sprayed those instead of going around and using the decals, because obviously they don't normally work. The little red stripes, trying to get them in the right place is a bit of a problem, so I actually use the decal for that one. So we pop them on, and then all we've done is a tiny little bit of chipping work, probably see on the close-up around the nose cowl, literally a bit of silver paint, and then just on a cocktail stick and sort of scratch it around a bit, gives us that type of overall effect. The other things as well, we probably see on the close-up, we've got done in here, we've put in little padding around, which is leather in real life. Now what I use is bits of plaster. So you've got your fabric plaster, just like this, okay, you know the one, if I open it up you'll get it immediately. Okay, these type of fabric plasters like this, all we do, cut it out to the right length, okay, stick it on, and then all you do is touch your colour, and in this case I used a little bit of the actual Red Brand XF64, touch it on and it'll flow and absorb into it all. And when it dries, it gives it that nice sort of padded look that we're after, and I think it works very, very well, so I don't have a problem with using that. That was on and installed. We put in the plumbing on the front end as well. You probably see on the close-up a little bit better there. That was installed. There again, these are all little things which you just have to do. There's no much point talking you through because they're quite time-consuming and very straightforward. One thing I am going to show you though is what I've done on this side, which isn't standard to the kit. And this is, if I bring you both in, you can see on both accounts here. Probably if we just bring you in here, you can see it. So you might be able to see here, we've got now the rods, the control rods running back to the rudder and the tail. Now, it doesn't come with the kit, there's no photo etch for it, so what I actually did is get some of this stuff. Now this here is piano wire, so it's very, very tiny, and I don't know if you'll see it on the camera, but it's straight, and that's the beauty. Now you could use, and I've got some here, we've got here, and like this is 6mm round, 0.6mm round. I think I've got a 0.4 here. Now the trouble with using these strips of styrene rod is they tend to sag. The great thing with piano wire, it is straight as a die, and obviously being wire, it acts the same way. Now sticking it on is a little bit of a problem. Running out of places to grab this one now. But basically what we do, as I say, trying to find places to grab. Basically what we do is just poke it into the slot and then into the one it is. Now I've cut these roughly to length at the moment. So what we can do, this is the one for the top, we can come along and just make sure they are to the right length. So to give you a rough idea of what size you actually need them to be, he says, desperately looking for his tape measure, here we go. So we've actually got here, if I tell you it in millimetres, it'd probably be a lot easier. So we've got here 90, if you did them all to 94mm, okay, then that way, so you want 94mm long, that way it will fit them all. So the easiest way to do this, as I found on the other side, is to put a drop of super glue just down in here. I've got it just down in front, okay. Then what we do, we get the wires, roll them in the end of the glue, okay, then we sit them up to where they go, okay, and we roughly place them and just glue the front end one in for the moment as in, okay. Now if you've got a little bit too much glue on there like I have, what you do is just grab a cocktail stick and just suck a little bit off with a cotton bud, sorry, and that just draws it away. Now we want to do the same for the others as well. The other thing I did try on the other side, I tried to put in a tiny little hole with a hot needle. To be honest, the holes are too big. This is such a fine, unless you've got an extremely fine blade drill bit to go in there at this size. I don't, hence we're doing it this way. So we're just going to pop this one in as well. So we want these to be in the right place and to be sticking on there. Then what we do, once they're dried on this end, we can get them stuck on the other end. Okay, then with a cocktail stick, you can come along, grab your glue, touch it on where you want it to go, onto the various control surfaces. Okay, then using the other end of the cocktail stick, it's probably difficult to see do this, so I'll try it on both cams. You can literally come along and place them on where you want. Squirt a kicker, bit of a blow. Okay, then what we do is put another tiny drop just on top, just to act as a final weld on there. That's the bottom one's done. Nice and straightforward. Now this top one does bend a little bit because I've got lots of things on the go here to try and show all at once, which is never an easy thing. So if we just bring the cameras in a little bit more. There we go. If we get that one in there, you can see roughly what I'm doing just down in here. Okay, and then that one as well, you can see what we're up to in here. So there we go. What we've got here is this one just down here, so we're going to pop a little bit of glue just on the top, but we've also got this front edge just down here, and what it does is sort of wrap its way over it, and that acts as a sort of a scraper type buffer. And then obviously to get this one to stick on is a bit of a pain, so we're going to glue both halves like so. Okay, squirt a kicker, and then very quickly we're just going to come in and press these two together and hold. Okay, so what we've done now, we've actually installed the weapons pylons and got them glued in. Now I haven't actually put any weapons onto them yet. Obviously we're going to be carrying the torpedo, so we can't have the big bombs on it, but we certainly can have the smoke and the little depth charges on there, so we can get those installed onto it. But what I want to do first is get these wings on, because it's quite important and they're not the easiest things to slide on. Already in test fitting, I've shimmed down, and by shimmed down I mean just sand them down lightly, top and bottom, made them a little bit thinner, so these slide on a lot easier. Now we've got little catches on the back as well, and that's going to lock the wings in and hold them in. But what we've done now, obviously we've unmasked windows, we've gone around, we've checked everywhere, we've put little bits of silver in here and there, all over it, just so we've got all the things where, you know, we don't need to get into, are all done. Really the last couple of things to go on is to arm it, guns on, put the little latches on, a couple of little aerials and things like that, and we're actually done. So I'm quite happy now to install the wings. Now these are quite delicate how they go on. Okay, obviously there's no problems which way round they actually go on, it's quite straightforward. This one is obviously going to be on the other side, so if we do the one closest, so what we're going to try and do is literally slide it on. Now take your time with it, don't go forcing it in, because the last thing we want to do is crack something at the top or misalign it or something like that. So obviously it fits in between, very gently inserting them in. So we've got the top one in and the bottom. Okay, and then holding onto the actual sprues themselves. What we're going to do then, it's on just like this. So you see we've got a bit of a gap going on there at the top. We get these in place because it's quite important. I want to show you them properly, he says, but not being a very good cameraman. There we go. So what I'm going to do is just sort of face it round towards me just a little bit, so we've got all the cameras in. Okay, then what we're going to do is just hold it up the top one. Okay, the bottom one is a very tight fit. To be honest, the bottom one is extremely tight to get this in. Okay, a little bit more at the top. So we're just sort of wiggling it in top and bottom, and this bottom one is proving to be extremely tight. There we go. Okay, and then top and bottom. fits that one in. As I said, it's one of those extremely tight ones to fit in. But there we go, that one is installed in there now. So we'll just do the same on the other side. Okay, we're almost there, and to be honest, installing the wings was a bit of a nightmare, because what happens is, when you install these rear latches just down here, it lifts the wing obviously up. Naturally, they hang a lot lower. As soon as you do that, all the rigging shifts completely, and a lot of it, because it was super glued, literally just pinged off and sat. Wasn't a bad problem, because then all I had to do was, I made it a lot easier to lift these wings up, secure them in place, and then obviously where it had popped off, cleaned off the little bit of super glue that was there, perhaps in a lot of the cases, and then obviously we could just glue it down again, and away we go. So it did free up a lot of easing, but it just shows how much movement. You only need to move it a little, like 1 millimeter, and all the rigging work just goes to pot. So I would probably advise, if I was to do this kit again, I wouldn't secure the rigging fully. I would leave it hanging half and half again until we're in the wing fold, or until you've got the wings actually on, then glue them in place as one of the last things to do. Also, you know, because we made a little bit of a mess, we've had to use super glue and kicker to lock it in, things like that. It would be a lot neater to do it as an afterfall. But there we go, that's basically how we've got to it at the moment. It's all looking very, very nice. It hides a lot of the details having the wings back, but you can still see in there quite nicely and things like that. So one of the last things to go on now, obviously we're going to put on some of the weaponry, which obviously is just quite fit. We'll do that afterwards for the final reveal. But basically we just got this aerial wire. Now for this I've just used a little bit of unbreakable thread, super glued it up to the front end first of all. We move it back a bit, you can see where we've got it. We move this one out just a fraction. And we move this camera down a little bit, there we go. So you can see it's just in up here on the close-up cam, you can see that. And then obviously what we've done, run it down to the bottom, we're going to run it back to this one back here, and what we're going to do, we're just going to take a little bit of super glue. It's gone a little bit thick now, it's quite tacky. We're just going to run it underneath this one here. Okay, take it down the back, hook it up and round. Okay, and then for the minute we're just going to hold it here until that sets off, and then we can sink it back down into the actual, which will be the radio receiver and everything else back down. So that's going to have to go down in between. There again, bit of a problems with the wing fold, but it's one of those things, which do you do first? Get the wings all sorted out and then aerials, or do it afterwards? So that one's down there now. Though this cable here doesn't have to be as taut as the top one does. So if you wanted to, you could do it quite loosely. So what I'm going to do is put a tiny blob of super glue just down where we want it to go in. Okay, which if you haven't destroyed it like I did, okay, that's down there now. Then all we're going to do is very carefully thread this cable down. Trying to think of the best way. Let's have a clean cocktail stick. Okay, then hopefully we can make our way, let it hang down. There we go, it's sat on there, just in there. I don't know how well you can actually see what we've done down in between. But there we go, we've seen there. Going to let that dry off. We'll put a brush a little bit of flat over it to marry it up. What I'm going to do then is snip off the actual thread once it's in there and is all tight and everything else together. Okay, and there we go. We're all completely all finished off. Done a couple of other things you want to see down here. We've put the smoke bombs on there and the little depth charges on there, as well as we've got a torpedo underneath. We're not going to put the freefall bombs on because obviously that'd be too much weaponry for this one, but as I say, they're all a loose fit, so you could easily put them on if you wanted to change its weapons fit around. Little things we've done. The engine is a loose fit purely because I intend to take this to shows and things, and just obviously having it as a loose fit will make one less thing to get damaged en route. So we can just literally push and slip that one back in just like that. Great aircraft to work with. As I said, normally doing World War sort of II and World War I biplanes are not my thing at all. I'm used to doing modern military jets, so obviously new types of weathering for me on this one. Weathering sort of canvas, all right, with metal plates at the front, but down the back you'll see on the close-up photos. Obviously doing weathering like that is totally different over fabric than what you do sort of on a modern military jet and things like that. So that was a new thing for me, and I hope I've sort of went through that well with you. Rigging, there's my biggest thing. It's been a real nemesis of mine, doing rigging on aircraft and things like that. Doing a little bit of research on it. Obviously, in reality, rigging on aircraft isn't round cables. It does tend to be flat barbs, even on sort of what the earliest World War one biplanes, they are sort of flat, and doing a little bit of research around the museum sort of showed that quite nicely. So by using what I thought was a little bit of a cop out, by using photo etch, which is flat, actually is right. So in some ways, although you're not going to get probably the scale if you was to try and do it on something like a 1/72 tiny little biplane, certainly on 1/48s and 1/32s like this, it is in scale and it is about right. So it's really, really nice to do that. Other things, open top cockpits and things like that is all new to me, and hopefully on those close-up photos you'll get in a moment, you'll see that really well. And by using like elastoplast for padding, works great for seat covers as well and things like that. Really brings all that to life and gives it a little bit of depth and everything like that. It's been an absolutely lovely build to do. Thoroughly enjoyed it, a lot more than I ever thought I would, if I'm totally honest with it. If you've enjoyed it, join me again next time.